Hey, what up, CAUSENETIC family?
Welcome to the CAUSENETIC podcast.
CAUSENETIC means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
We're tackling topics and telling the truth.
I'm Rodrigo Ross.
I'm Keith Benson.
So today, one of my most favorite people in the world. When I tell y'all that he is so stinking interesting, I'm not even exaggerating, because I'm not really a dramatic, exaggerating kind of.
When does stinking become
a good thing? He turned something that most people would think. He is so stinking interesting and so amazing. I love him. Y'all are gonna love him too. You're gonna feel extra smart after this podcast, I promise.
So this podcast, we're talking about, if these walls could talk.
So Ryan Bean, who is joining us today, is the archivist and the reference and outreach archivist with the Kautz Family YMCA Archives. And when I tell you he has access, he knows history. The stories are amazing. He does amazing work with just telling the truth and the history of the YMCA. Welcome to the CAUSENETIC podcast, Ryan. So excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And Rodrigo, I have to have you put that in paper for my next performance review.
Yes, it's done deal. I'll email that to you later on today. Right. Done deal.
So, I mean, that is the title that no one holds in the YMCA but you. There's a whole lot of program directors and sports directors, aquatics directors, but
CEOs,
of reference and outreach archivists.
It just says genius. That's what it says to me.
So tell us about the genius stuff that you do in your role.
Well, I work with really good people. That's the genius part.
That is definitely genius.
No, you're right. I am very fortunate in that I have one of those jobs that, like you say, no one else has. My wife not too long ago goes, "You're the only person in the world who has that job," and that's just a nature of the work. But so the official language is we are responsible, me and my colleagues. There's one other full-time person, Alex Bentley, and then students who really are the lifeblood of the work and, help make sure the trains keep running and trying and all that. But what we do is we preserve, provide access, and help interpret and contextualize the rich history of the American YMCA movement. So that's it. Is I really am lucky that I get paid to, among other things, think about the YMCA all day and try to figure out what the heck is this thing.
Yes.
Yeah. YMCA. I'm still working on that, but I got a few theories. So.
Yes. Okay. When you figure it out, please let me be the first to know.
I love
everything is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I love stories. I wish I could say I'm a history buff, but I like history and the stories that it has to tell. Mm-hmm. Can you take us to one of the earliest stories of the YMCA from an American, based on research that you all have done?
Oh, boy. I'll tell you a couple of favorite stories. And I think we all are historians, whether we know it or not. I feel like we all have our personal histories. Most of the people everyone we work with has their histories. Most of our button heads is when we don't understand each other's histories. So we understand history, but we don't maybe necessarily think about it. But I will tell a story. This is one of my more favorite ones about like the unintended consequences of the work that the guys do. And I like to share this because you never know what you're going to do. Before I was in the archives, I was a youth worker. So youth worker at heart. And so this is why I love this job, as it married a passion of service and working with people with history. I was an undergrad in history. So when I found this, it worked really well. But this story is about the YMCA in Korea. And when the Americans, so a little over half the Ys around the world are the result of American YMCA secretaries, is what they're called then, CEOs today. Participating in a missionary enterprise, spreading Christianity in the YMCA organization across the globe. And they came to Korea and they did many things. This man's name was William Gillette. His main purpose was education. So they ran like a vocational training school, teach people trades and all that sort of stuff. And you never know the details, right? History is written with little scraps of evidence. And so we have reports and correspondence and memos of him writing to New York and talking about what he's doing with the guys and what they're learning and what they need. Usually they need money. When they need more money. I don't know if you're still
some things don't change.
Right.
Okay.
Some things don't change.
But you don't know the context behind it. But at some point in one of these days, like happens in the Y, they probably found themselves with some free time. They had the guys and they figured out something to do, right? So somehow he organized a pickup game of baseball. And he is now known and recognized as like the father of Korean baseball.
Wow.
And many years ago, the Korean Sports Agency or something was celebrating the 100-year anniversary of baseball in Korea, and the archives was able to try to help connect them with ancestors of this individual. They came and did like a history detectives like interview for Korean TV, and like the document where Gillette and baseball are written on the same page. And the point being is he was probably filling time, right?
Yeah.
With kids, you got a lot of time you got to fill, and you can either constructively fill it or, just try to while it away. But he brought what he was doing, what he knew, and you never know what's going to happen. And in addition to all this great other work he was doing, he also brought baseball to Korea. And I love that. Like, you just never know the impact you're going to have. And often, I'm sure he never knew. Right. Never knowing that he was going to do that, he did that, or it played out that way.
Good. I always learn something new whenever I talk to Ryan.
Right.
Oh man! Right. And so, as a part of the amazing things that you're doing in your role, you have a project called Decoding Punch Cards: The Development of a Zooniverse. What is a Zooniverse? And then what is this project? It sounds so interesting.
Oh, you did your homework. Good for you. Yeah, we were very proud to finish that. So the centennial of the end of World War I was a few years ago, and well, I guess you're recording, so you're quoting me on this, but there was something around 25,000 men and women who were engaged with the Y during World War I, and the day after President Wilson declared the U.S. was going to enter the war, then General Secretary John Mott said, "The American Y is with you. Now, you all are in the Y, right? And so if YUSA said every YMCA in the country is with you, how true is that?" Not really, right? You all get to decide for yourselves. And yet he said this and was able to, with his, he was an organizing genius, and he probably called in a lot of favors and whatnot, but it happened. The by and large, the American YMCA stepped up, engaged their communities, were able to bring in about over 25,000 men and women to work into the war effort, and they did it almost overnight. Wow. So these punch cards are, it's an analog database. It's a little card. If you ever saw, like, way back in the days when computers were first coming out, maybe you see it in like documentaries, movies, that they would program with punch cards.
Yes.
She remembers.
Yeah, right.
I can't stand Keith.
It's like that, but it's not like that. But it has all this information about who they are, what they did, what their qualifications are. And this is a rich source of information. It would be a database you could cross-reference, but it was locked in this format, what we call an analog format. It wasn't digital, but you would have these keys you could phone through. So you go, I want to find all the women. And so you'd put the key in and you'd shake it up, and then you would sort the cards that way. And that's how you would do a query or whatever. And so Zooniverse is a platform. I believe it was born out of, it's a partnership. It's around the globe, but it is, it's called for citizen scientists. And it started with astronomy, where they would have, Hubble and all these telescopes were taking billions of pictures, way more than computers, and the computers need to be trained on that. And so you folks like you and me, citizen scientists, would go through, they'd say, hey, click every star that's yellow. And you'd go through and you click it, and that would, you do the processing. So they've since grown that platform into the humanities and other things. And so we use that, and we had thousands of people from all around the globe, just with their own goodwill, go through and tag all the different holes that these people had, all their attributes. So we now know that this individual spoke German and they were deployed in France and they were paid this much money. So we created a data set, and the hope is that now it's out there for the world, and other people, genealogists use this a lot. We partnered with Family Search, which is an outfit out in Utah that does a lot of genealogy. So these cards are there, people can look at, but it's just it was an interesting way to get the broader community to participate in helping unleash the knowledge that's trapped in the archives.
Man, so when we say that the Y is just not a swimming gym, we have all kinds of evidence to show that, but we still only talk about gym and swim kind of stuff. Like, that is amazing.
Right. So how do we get past that gym and swim mentality to really engage people into the history of the YMCA?
Oh, you do it, right? It's not just the past, but it's the today, and whatever the Y shines a light on is what people are going to see about it. And we know they do great things.
That's
and
right.
A lot of the great work that the Y does has its roots in the past. The gym and swim came about a good 50 years or so after the Y was in the U.S. So it's not our foundation, and it's reminding that gym and swim was a solution to a problem. So what are the problems that the Y is trying to be a solution to? And I think
now one of the problems that I think that we set up for our gym and swim today. So here's my little education. So I was scrolling through some podcasts one day, and I saw this one podcast about cigarette smuggling.
Cigarette smuggling, not smoking?
No, smuggling.
Smuggling. That's a thing.
That's a thing.
Oh.
And how the YMCA.
We smuggled cigarettes? Oh my God.
So, I'm done piqued my interest now, right? So I'm listening. So long story short, but it was basically about this smuggling goes on from North Carolina to New York. And so they trace the roots back to cigarettes and how they became so popular. And they became popular because the YMCA would give those to the servicemen. I believe it was World War II, as a relief, I guess, of sorts. Are you aware of that?
I didn't know about the up and down the coast, but I do know.
No, the Y did not smuggle. Now, please, pardon this interruption, everybody. The YMCA did not. The YMCA did not smuggle.
Well, we just provided cigarettes.
We provided cigarettes, and therefore cigarettes became popular, and therefore you got popularity of cigarettes today.
And there's a really cute photo in the archives online. In World War I, they had little dogs, French bulldogs, that would have cartons of cigarettes sort of like on a harness on their side. And they go through the trenches and drop off cigarettes for the troops. And probably at one point in time, the Y was probably one of the largest purveyors of tobacco on the planet for a year or so.
What?
Another example, if I can, if you hear me, on unintended consequences. So I heard this story from a friend and retired executive, and he had this older individual that every year gave pretty generously to the annual campaign, and there was no other connection as far as they could tell from this person. This old man gave pretty good amount of money every year, and at one point in time, he had the insight that you should probably ask this guy why he's giving so much money and see if there's some more there. Well, it turns out, long story short, that this guy was a vet of World War I and credited the Y, that dog, and those cigarettes for saving his sanity. And ever since then, was grateful to the organization. Had no affiliation with the Y other than the Y was there to help him in his time of need, and continue to pay dividends into the future for that.
So my thought to that is that, we created this problem, and now our solution today is gym and swim.
It's gym and swim. But Ryan, I have heard you tell amazing stories about unintended consequences in the YMCA. Like, we were trying to do a good thing, but later on we had an aha moment, like, we probably shouldn't do that. That's probably, even in the book by Heather McGee, The Sum of Us, when they talked about segregating pools in Mississippi, right? when all of that was going on, the Y came in as the community convener, right? And like, hey, we know the city doesn't, we'll go in and we'll run the pools and we'll follow we just want to make sure that people still have access, but not knowing unintended consequences, you were upholding segregation, like you were keeping people out of the pool. Clearly that wasn't the intention, but looking back, we're like, yeah, that probably, that probably wasn't the best thing to do.
Well, that's why I think history is important, because it helps us be curious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why is a reflection of their communities, good and, room for improvement.
Yeah.
And so as the community kind of gets hip to maybe we shouldn't be doing that, that's the Y is getting hip to that too.
Yeah.
I think the Y has a role to help us get caught up to speed a little quicker than maybe we need.
I think so.
Yeah.
And just sometimes just saying, when you know better, you do better, right? Like, we made those mistakes. It doesn't have to define us as an organization moving forward. We can realize that wasn't the best practice, and here's what we're going to do to rectify it, as opposed to sometimes get a little knee-jerk and defensive and be like, oh, no, we didn't do that. We did that. But let's stop doing it now, okay? Now that we know, let's just stop. It's fine.
100%. Yeah, it's not about apportioning blame. It's about
Yeah.
So, man, as you dig through all that juicy information there, like what was, if you can reflect back to kind of one of your first like aha moments as you were digging through all the research on the Y, and that one moment just kind of excited you?
It was kind of a slow drip. And that, so the history I studied in my undergrad was kind of like progressive era and labor politics, and that kind of the defining moment of the Y, the late 1800s, early 1900s. But what I saw, what I have seen, and what I continue to see is that as big as the Y is, it's small compared to like the world, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
And so the Y really punches above its weight. The Y has had a tremendously outsized influence on America and international and global affairs. My wife just, I could probably hear her eyes rolling now because her spider senses are tingling because she knows I'm about to say, the Y, fill in the blank. And it's not about, and people in the Y oftentimes get really obsessed with the firsts, right? Like, we invented basketball. That's great, but really when you dig into that, why was basketball created? What was the problem that was being solved? And the capacity for the Y to spot opportunity, put it into a program and share that with a larger community is something to behold. And so as I started, it went from being, oh, that's cool. That's interesting. Another one. Here we go again. It just, it's this ongoing thing of, I can't believe they continue. And researchers come and continue to enlighten me on the Y being, at the very least, part of a conversation.
Yeah. Oh, that is so amazing. So I remember we did a Black History Month program here in Dallas, a virtual event. And you put together an amazing PowerPoint for me, just chronicling the history of African Americans in the movement. It was a game changer. It was so much that I didn't know. I almost couldn't do the presentation because I was so busy having these mind-blown moments during me trying to give the presentation to other people. But in that space, because it's so much work, and it absolutely mirrors and I would think impacts, the history of this country in terms of race relations and as such. What are some of your favorite stories or the more pivotal moments that, in your research in that space?
Because like I said, the Y is a reflection of its community. I feel like the Y is a really powerful lens into humanity and people and how we think and how we tick and what motivates us. I'll tell two quick ones there. One I hold up regularly because it defies what I think I have the energies to bring to the table, and that is band-wise, the black and non-white
Yes.
secretaries that came out in the late 60s, early 70s. And what I find so inspiring about Bandwise is it's an example of the Y movement holding itself accountable. Right? These were folks who were sick and tired of being sick and tired, as people say, right? And they could have, and frankly should have, a lot of people probably were telling them, get out of there.
Yeah.
What are you stacking around here for? You know, on paper, there's nothing special about a YMCA, right? There's nonprofits, but there is something special.
Yes.
There's some secret sauce that keeps people in it. And so that group on their own got together to hold the organization accountable and call out institutional racism to great personal potential sacrifice is incredibly inspirational. And that's an example I hold up time and time again about, you know, what does courage look like? What does truth telling look like? It's, you know, it's just being transparent. The other thing that I love is, you know, it's the Young Men's Christian Association.
Yeah. And
most of those labels are pretty powerful, pretty loaded, and lots of people have lots of opinions about them. And so I've been researching for about the last 8 years pretty intensely a former program called Y Indian Guides. All right, the guides. And that's the whole other podcast for a whole other day.
Yes, it is.
It creates a whole lot of questions as to why. What is going on in society? What is going on with these people that they've held to take on another person's culture? What was going on in American society, frankly, white middle-class American society, that made it so difficult for dad to say, I love you, but Gray Wolf could? So I'm a father of a 6-year-old. So I really, it speaks to me.
That is so deep, Ryan. Yes. That is so, see, every time I talk to Ryan, I'm just speechless.
So
mind blown.
I've had the opportunity here in Dallas to oversee the Moreland branch, which was named after Jesse Moreland. And it was the Black Y when it's founded in 1928. And so looking at some of that history there, being able to see some of the folks who stayed at the YMCA, like Muhammad Ali, Ernie Banks, it draws me back to Dr. King and him being involved with the Y. So I just wanted to hear a story about some of the things that you may have found about Dr. King and his involvement with the Y.
You know, there's not, it's pretty superficial in the record. We know there's more there. There's two things on that. One is during that time period, in most communities, I don't think it was a branch. It was maybe even an independent association, right?
Yeah.
But there was what was called the Colored Work Department office that helped, like or field officers or the resource centers sort of today. But that records, which are digitized, and anybody in the world can get access to them and see and read Jesse Moreland's letters and reports and stuff, and it's fascinating. But the truth is they were doing the Lord's work with very minimal resources compared to the need, right?
Yeah.
So you could write reports or you could do the work, right?
Yeah.
So there is record keeping, there is documentation, but you just know you're missing 9/10 of the story.
Yeah.
But one important thing about that narrative that kind of comes up from time to time, the Y, Dr. King stayed at the Y, right? But as you said, which YMCA did he stay in? And so while the Black Y movement was vibrant and strong and connected, the larger Y movement, writ large, there are exceptions, but writ large, was, I think it's fair to say, largely indifferent. So this is where qualifying what our statements are important, because when, if we go around saying the Y was a champion of the civil rights movement, and then something happens, and then we're okay, champion,
right?
I'm ready for you. Step up. It's a very different thing, and it's a much more impactful conversation to unpack which whys, in what context, and what were they doing there?
Yeah.
Why was a safe space to get together and have transparent conversations without feeling like you're putting yourself at risk, right?
Right. Right.
It was both a logistical convenient place and a necessary. The Y and the church were one of the handful of spaces probably available at that time. So sorry I don't have any juicy tidbits there, but
I'll go check in with the folks down in Atlanta and see what they. I think they got a few things down.
I bet
there.
they got a lot more going on.
Probably, right? Probably. Well, it has been amazing as usual. If these walls could talk, I encourage anybody. Huh? You gotta whisper it? If these walls could talk.
Because they might be whispering like that.
That's kind of creepy. That's kind of creepy.
I tell you what, if some walls started to talk.
If they started to talk right now,
that
this
would be
podcast would be over. Yes, it would. But I encourage anyone out there that is listening, please reach out to Ryan Bean at the Kautz Family YMCA Archives. I promise anything you want to know history-wise, you want to make some correlations, you want to understand how did we get here today, where we've been, what can we re-energize. He is the one for you. I get smarter every time I talk to Ryan, and I'm a genius. Like, I'm almost genius.
That bar wasn't very. So, look, hey, CAUSENETIC family, thank you guys for listening.
On this episode called If the Walls Could Talk.
Hey, subscribe and listen to us weekly.
Don't be shy. Give us a 5-star review.
And as always,
be dynamic.
be phenomenal.
Be CAUSENETIC.